Good morning. How you doing on this Monday morning um, of the Outcast Dawn Walk? Dawn Walkers tuning in from northern Thailand in the province of Phayao. And it's a very humid morning. Fall is here. We should expect a lot of rain. Good morning, Monday, September. A September to remember, Monday morning at 6:14 a.m. from northern Thailand in the province of Phayao. And we are on the Outcast Dawn Walk live just to check out the morning, you know, and recognize that we are, at least to ourselves, that we're alive and grateful for being alive and grateful. That sounds a little redundant. That's because it is. But let's not confuse redundancy with with redundancy, which means a dunce, or I got to make up the words as I go along. But I think you get the idea. Today, I wanted to talk about um, the 38 auspices of life. Basically, there are 38 rules in the subset of like that for happiness in life that Buddha and his disciples basically went over, 3,000 years ago, um, to try to figure out what is the meaning of life and what makes it like what is the best way to um, engage in life. And it's a question which that people have every day, and they don't even know they're asking the question. I think a lot of people who are engaged in the internet space definitely are aware of it. Um, I just want to say I don't know. I didn't follow Charlie Kirk. I didn't follow what I found out. The new word was what's the word of the group of people. I think that their leader is like Nick Fuentes, according to like Wikipedia or something like that. And basically, like they have like some sort of a strong uh, belief system um, that doesn't necessarily align with um, I guess, what we would say mainstream thought, um, which doesn't automatically say they have no points or anything like that. I don't know. I don't know what points they have. I don't. Um, I'm not a specialist in that. I'm trying to figure out life for myself, and I think that all of us are trying to figure out life for ourselves. Look at that; it's beautiful. Look at that. That's called a jiao, and jiao is um, like a spirit house that people build up. I'm going to let's get a little closer to this one because I walk by it every morning. And it's really beautiful. It's a jiao, and basically um, it's a recognition of your ancestors and recognition of the spirit world and the other possibilities of that are out there. So people come regularly, as you can see, and place flowers, even food down, and incense, perform a prayer for the spirits of their ancestors, and so that they don't like. so they'll be able to find their way home or not, know where they uh, sort of like uh, in I guess like how do I describe it in animism, which is like one of the if not the oldest form of religion in humanity, is the spirit belief in the spirit world and belief in our connection to nature and stuff like that. So that is part of Hinduism and Buddhism, and this is the jati that people who live here have set up and pay homage to their deceased loved ones. And you could even go sit over here if you wanted to. Maybe you talk to a relative or something like that, friend, relative, and share an experience of life. So it's like sort of like hospitable, beautiful, spiritual, clean-minded space. So, which is one of the 38 auspices of uh, Buddhism, the auspices of supreme being. I can think. I don't know if like that's like I've seen it translated as like the 38 auspices of the supreme being of being a supreme being. So relieving yourself of dukkha, which is suffering. So our like goal in life is to not suffer, right? But unfortunately, to be alive is to suffer, right? You're gonna there's almost no way to avoid suffering when you're alive, no matter what state it is. You know, that's why you see people with $1 billion committing suicide. You know, sometimes. Ultimately, happiness doesn't come um, from the qualities of physical world like gold and coin and money. Not even necessarily. True happiness doesn't come from power over other people, but power over yourself. And this is one of the core principles of Buddhism. I think it's called Dhamma, and it's to have emotional control of yourself is very important. And a lot of people who are capable of great thinking, I don't think they have. I've never seen them expressed in an emotional state, like I guess um, some sort of heightened anxiety. I guess um, maybe they did. Maybe I just don't know. But I think if we reflect on Albert Einstein or Martin Luther King or um, other great thinkers through history. I mean, there's so many, and each one of these people are what Buddhism would consider a Buddha, because Buddha means enlightened spirit, right? So to be a Buddha is not a Buddha god, right? There's thousands of Buddhas. Jesus Christ is a Buddha. Martin Luther King is a Buddha. Bob Marley is a Buddha. Um, Noam Chomsky's a Buddha. You know, um, enlightened beings, people of enlightenment. And so rarely, I think you see people of true enlightenment express these outward expressions of high levels of anxiety and emotion. And that's certainly to their benefit, because anxiety and emotion are one of the obstacles that we face every single day, which prevents us from clarity of thought. Um, it's very important, you know, to be aware of these things, and it may sound, as I said before, a little bit redundant, but the thing is that there are 8 billion plus people on the planet. And yet there are horrible acts of violence, malice, sins, sins across all tenets of religions, of all, you know, reasonable religion, I would say. I mean, there's some, I don't even go into it, but like people believe in like cannibalism and stuff like that, whatever, I don't really, I'm not considering that as a religion, but I think it might be. Uh, um, but yeah, so it's emotional control over your. Arun sa sabay nila pa. Kapo. Wani je phone talk mai. Phone je talk mai. Oh yeah. Made do toy. Arun sa sabay nila pa. ขอโทษนะอ๋อเพราะว่าผมอยากดูรถมาผมกลัวรถมาหลังครับผมอ๋อไม่ได้รู้ That's nice. Get to talk to some people. She's asking me there's a lot that's not is what been wrong and not really being used as much in this town as the one not too far from here on the other side of the canal. Anyway, there's something going on in that lot, and that I passed by. We passed by um, a few days ago, and we're like, we saw the lights and stuff like that. And we're like, oh, and I didn't realize that there was a building there, and you know, but apparently there's the funeral for a monk who lived to be about 100 years old, and his body stays in sort of a preserved state for, I think, for a year before they cremate him. Seems like an awfully long time, but like, um, yeah. Good morning, Scott74. Good to see you. How's everything? Are you enjoying your fall in Canada? Has the temperature gotten colder yet? We're in fall here. Fall, you'll see more more clouds, more mist, and stuff like that because we're in a valley, and precipitation naturally collects in the valley. What makes it good for farming. Things running off the mountain, elements. So I don't know if you were here. It's Monday morning, and we're just sort of talking about um, some of the tenets called the 38 auspices of well-being life in Buddhism, and we're just going over one of them. I said, and my reasoning for going over them, even though I said it sounds redundant, is that there's something like 8 billion people on the planet, and there's terrible things that are happening, and people have had these lessons, But if you can forget, people can forget. So if you're not like wary, WARY, like your steps, you can find yourself going off this path, right? So, and that's why it might be called the Eightfold Noble Path, which has the 38 auspices within the Eightfold Noble Path for happiness in life. So, the first auspice, it's still nice, but cooler in the morning. Well, that's nice. I hope you're getting your exercise. And I guess the leaves, what's really nice about the Northeast, I think, in North America, the Northeast of North America, the the changing. Okay, I guess it would be all the way to the southeast as well. Changing the leaves, autumn leaves. They're beautiful. We get that here too. Yeah, even though it doesn't, we don't quite have the same seasons. So the first one we've gone over, we went over already was the control over yourself and your emotions, and the ability to have clarity of thought. And you cannot have clarity of thought if you have emotional problems, uh, clouding your judgment, which means logic should reign supreme, which means that Buddhism would be more. Yeah, I heard uh, there were the three horsemen of the apocalypse. Uh, One of them passed away from cancer, and I think he wrote the book, "Well, God is Not Great," and his spiritual affiliation that he did. Tony Hitchinson, I think is Hitchinson, Christopher Hitchens. Yeah. So he was talking about his, how religion poisons the mind and stuff like that. Is what one of the things that he was talking about um, in the wake of September 9/11. And it's really got a lot of momentum for um, himself, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, and I believe he's the youngest of them all, and he's still of those three, and he's still talking and giving talks or interviews. Trying to remember his name. And incidentally, he seems to be the most appealing of them all to me. Maybe it's because he's closest to my age. I don't know. I like Christopher Hitchens' delivery and command of the English language. Certainly, you can admire there. We can admit that he had uh, an eloquent way of speaking, well educated. You know, Unfortunately, he passed away of throat cancer, which I thought it was tragic that he passed away because I didn't consider what he was saying uh, hurtful. But I have a relative who is Christian evangelical, I guess, Christian evangelist, evangelical Christian. I think that's what it's called. And he's a pastor at his church. And I think he was going through uh, um, getting like a doctorate in religious studies at the time. But anyway, the Hitchens passed away. And I saw, he posted like right away, this is God's payback for all the terrible things Christopher Hitchens had to say. And I think that's really terrible. I thought that was a really depraved, in my opinion, way of thinking. I don't agree with everything Christopher Hitchens said for sure. I don't agree. I don't want to just uh, robotically agree. I'd like to be able to think. I'd like to be able to have the ability to think. Unfortunately, sometimes if we don't follow a path of religion, our abilities to think are not as clear as some of the tenets, TENETS, of religion, basically, whatever like the seven sins and the Eightfold Noble Path in Buddhism and stuff like that. So, and so he remarked, this is, God's punishment And now that I think about it, I think that's pretty sort of like not only just the depraved thing to said, but it is a self like uh, it's making a statement like yourself is the greater judgment of life and death. You know, like your ideas or your beliefs are so strong, and that you can make judgment of life and death, and the character. I don't know. I mean, that requires probably a lot of thinking, at least brain power on my part, which I'm a little on the short side of. So um, anyway, I mean, it's kind of like a lot, like him saying that, and I know knowing that like at that time, that this person was a pastor, right? What we would consider the right wing conservative party, Republican Party at the time, which is based by the evangelical Christians, I think, in the United States. And for him to be, because I know that he was so involved and invested, him, his ideas, and his family, and surrounding things that um, he says to say something like that. So I kind of reflect on, a little bit on the events that happened to Charlie Kirk, who was right-wing conservative Christian evangelical. Terrible thing that happened on the assassination. First of all, we'll be clear that Christopher Hitchens died of natural causes, well, cancer. Maybe not. Maybe they weren't. I mean, there's all sorts of conspiracies you could throw at it. But let's just say he died of natural causes, and Charlie Kirk was not. Christopher Hitchens was in his late 50s, I think, if not his early 60s, when he did pass away. And Charlie Kirk was 31 or something like that. Um, and they are diametrically opposed in their beliefs, in their belief system. But so, and I don't live in the United States, so I just kind of like take what I can get off of the internet and try to digest and analyze some of the things, you know. So this sort of a point of view from the outside, I guess, and that people were being fired for celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, which is a repulsive act in itself to celebrate in the uh, high-profile assassination of anybody or execution of anybody or death of anybody. I don't think that there's anything to celebrate about that. But, certainly when Osama bin Laden was assassinated, I did not celebrate. I didn't think that it was appropriate to celebrate. Um, you know, um, but I'm not a Muslim, and so I did not celebrate. I don't think there's necessarily a good thing that happened. It's all tragic, you know. And I happened to actually be in the United States on that day at uh, um, just a mile away from the World Trade Center. I used to work underneath the World Trade Centers in the early '90s. I knew a lot of people who worked in the towers. I've been in the towers many times myself. I know a lot of people who passed away on that day, and it's a tragic, terrible, horrific event. And but yeah. So how does this all come together? Well, I don't know that any right wing evangelicals, Christian evangelicals, lost their jobs because they celebrated Christopher Hitchens' death, which I definitely saw. One of my relatives, my DNA relatives, was doing it. And I thought that it was just a repulsive act, in my opinion. It's just all I can give. But I don't think that anybody lost their job. I didn't think there was this like manhunt, for people. Now, Granted, today's world has rapidly changed since Christopher Hitchens passed away, and that of September 10th, I think it was. Uh, the technological world has changed, the landscape has changed, society is changing so rapidly, um, that it may not. I wouldn't sort to evaluate, them as like parallel events or times and places, just as you wouldn't like sort of uh, say that people of the mindset 100 or 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, whatever, is going to be the same. So they sort of like a petri dish of societal explanation, societal features, right? So now, so I saw it anyway. That people have been hunted down, lost their job, and stuff like that. And it's also ridiculous. Um, People expressing themselves emotionally in a ridiculous, what I consider a ridiculous emotional state. อรุณสวัสดิ์สบายดีหรือเปล่าครับผมมาออกกำลังครับครับผมครับผม So as you see how things change, I've noticed how things have changed on the internet. Now, incidentally, when the internet first came around in the mid '90s, when it became more accessible to people, I became a digital nomad right away. It was great for me. In 1995, I was able to make a good living on the internet as a digital nomad, playing a game because I had studied my whole life up to that point playing this game, and I had reached a high level of skill, recognized uh, by some. อรุณสวัสดิ์พี่สาวลุงสบายดีหรือเปล่าครับผมวันนี้จะฝนจะตกไหมวันนี้จะไปบ้านฉางครับผมลุงสบายดีหรือเปล่าโอเคอรุณสวัสดิ์ so Gumeru, good morning, how you doing from Thailand? Payao. Scott 74 says you can have a difference in opinion, but nothing calls for that. Right. So the thing is that the reason you see people behaving this way is they don't think that there's like that it doesn't call for extreme action, such as like for them, they feel like it's an extinction level, or it's such a threat to them that their life must depend on it. Therefore, they have to eliminate the threat. I'm guessing, you know. So they see it as a threat to their existence, which is Neil deGrasse Tyson said something really interesting one time. He said that human beings are the only species on this planet of animal, the only animal that we know of that will kill another one of our own because we think we know what that other person is thinking. And I tried to say it with the dramatic pause that Neil deGrasse Tyson does. But, he's obviously the goat. So yeah, we are like only species that will kill another one simply because we believe this other one believes something, whether now it's true or not. They don't even know sometimes what they really believe. You know. So So I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I took a look at Turning Point, a little bit of Turning Point's ideas. I haven't like really delved deeply into it because it's just not something that has come into my world. It has come into my world because I don't know why. Yeah, because obviously here in Thailand we have heard about it. You know, people here are informed through news and stuff like that, and people reflect on it. Hello, good morning. Oh, oh, oh,พี่น้อยสบายหรือเปล่าอ่ะคุยกับพี่สบายหรือเปล่าโอ้4 เดือน4 เดือน 5 เดือนเดี๋ยวไม่อยากไปอเมริกาอยู่ต้องแกปปี้ครับผมรูปรอ good to see you อ่ะ bye thank you you too ครับผม so so I said which is so one of the things that there were I think were a proponent of I don't know what hello was they had some theory about the great replacement like white people were being replaced and that this was one of their calls to arms right we don't want it to be replaced or whatever and it's kind of a ridiculous I mean it's not ridiculous like fundamentally it's probably not a ridiculous statement across all any group of people to be concerned about their extinction. I guess maybe not, because for me it's not about that. I mean, I certainly don't think about that. People might see me as a white person or something like that, but I don't believe I'm being replaced or anything like that. And certainly, I haven't done anything in my life to try to promote myself, like have a lot of kids or or say anything about being replaced or anything like that. I mean, I don't know. You could just ask the Denisovans, the Neanderthals, the Nalendi, what they felt about being replaced. I don't know. Even if white Caucasians are being replaced, I mean, certainly there's not the strangleholds that the primarily Caucasian white Christian evangelicals had over the United States for a number of years, and that's a shift of power. And clearly, that's something that bothers them, you know, because there has been a shift of power. But if that shift of power has come from their base, from their forefathers, then you would presume that this sort of the destiny that they've chosen. But I guess that's where and I guess and that's sort of in a way where you get people who are divided, right? So now we're going to subdivide into now you're not only Republican or Democrat, right or left or something like that, but there are subdivisions, you know. So and and people make broad assessments and statements. So I'm just saying that if this might be the course of nature, but I don't see it. I see the richest people in the world are still, well, I mean, a lot of them are white, like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. Is Jeff Bezos white? I don't know. Um, but certainly Elon Musk has, I don't know how many kids he has, but I don't know if he knows how many kids he has, but yeah, he has had a. Ano gusto ka? Punta sa body mo pa? But I don't know. I mean, it's just a weird situation to me to be so involved that in this. I think, like, I don't know. It's certainly not the Eightfold Noble Path, and it's certainly not the path to enlightenment. I don't think under any religion the core values. So, um, unless you're one of those cannibalistic religions, which I would advise staying away from, unless you want to end up on the dinner plate. But yeah, so um, yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Well, the number one auspice for a better, happy, more fulfilled life and releasing yourself from the pain of life, because as we've said before, life is pain, right? It's not easy, and we all suffer our daily suffering, suffering. Um, but the number one auspice is the first one that it says, um, not to associate, not to make the association with fools. And what they mean by that is, do not associate yourself with fools. People who have bad things to say about other people who uh, may lie, uh, or uh, um, have evil intent, and of course that leaves the door open for uh, other things, like like, how do you identify these things and stuff like that. But so the first step to a happier life that uh, the Buddhist the first Buddha, maybe the first Buddha and his disciples came up with, is not to have association with, not to be associate yourself with people who behave in poor manners and stupidity, uh, mental illness, and it's obviously I certainly suffer from I think some mental instability in my life, that's for sure, and I'm certainly I consider myself very smart, but which all gets into my comedy routine about how I cheated the IQ test, but where I took the IQ test and I guess the score came back 90. I said, this is impossible. There's no way that my score, my IQ is going to come back 90, 95. How could this be? you know, so the average IQ, I think, of most Americans is around there. I think. I'm not sure. Anyway, so my comedy routine is, well, we've got to fix this because this certainly doesn't sit well with me at all. I mean, I can't. There's no way that I've got an average IQ. So here's the first thing: how to boost your IQ from 90 or 95 or from 100. You want to gain. You can give yourself 5 to 10 points. All you got to do is admit that you don't know anything. All of a sudden, you just increased your IQ. So that test isn't on the IQ test. So, but so now you've just elevated your IQ by at least 10 points, maybe. Admit that you don't know anything, you know, and then you can continue to admit more faults and more humility. And eventually you get to an IQ of um, comparable to any genius. So that's how I cheated the IQ test. When I came back, my IQ came back around, I don't know what it was. One of the tests that I took, I think it came back 95 or something like that when I took it. I think at the time, to be fair, when to myself, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like what the average is. And if that is average, whatever, fine. I don't have a problem with it. But I was drinking at the time. And this was years ago. And then that's how I, in my stupidity, decided how I was going to cheat the IQ test because I wasn't going to accept this, not without a fight. That's how I cheated the IQ test. Who knows? I mean, like it's such a, it's in a way, it's a malevolent force to actually have, uh, malevolent, saying that right. It does something that does not necessarily do good for the broad reaches of society. It might be good to an assessment for assignment of tasks for people to be part of society and stuff like that. But um, you can certainly feel, if you don't score highly, or if you score, even if you score average or just a little above average, you probably might have a feeling of inadequacy. you know, which so that's kind of interesting, right? At least I every person I've uh, pretty much every person. No, I don't think no, it might be every person. I don't think that I've ever met a person who didn't tell me their IQ was at least 116 or higher, right? So if you look up IQ, I think 116 is like that's the Arun Swapi, Sabadi Lopao. I think 116 is the cutoff point for genius, right? So every person, right? Yeah, it's individual, right? So there, obviously, there's got to be other uh, quantities or quotients, like the emotional quotient that you throw in there. But I just think that's funny that I have never met anybody who, when I had a conversation with them, uh, if we were sort of in a competitive arena. Arun Swan, hello, sabadi lupa. So I just think that's funny. I mean, if you ask anybody, you can like go to a sporting event or something like that. I don't know who's going to sit there and the test works, but some might not like it. Yeah, right. Well, I don't know. Have you ever taken the Rorschach test? Like when I was a kid, they gave it to me because I had I had perceived as having some sort of disorder, emotional problem uh, due to ADHD or some sort of hyperactivity thing. But I think upon further I get through life and reflect on it, it has more to do with the environment that I was in, which was um, highly toxic environment. And I'm just a kid, so like I don't think I think kids are not capable of like they learn from their surroundings and stuff like that. So I don't know, I've said this many times before. I grew up in a very poor area, and by the time I was like 12, I witnessed something like that. 12, I've been witness to like easily over 10 murders, you know, and this is something that like can really like affect a child. I remember the first one that I saw was my father's best friend. My father's best friend. I was with him. I was 5 years old, and he got stabbed in the neck. And they wanted me as a child witness, and I was traumatized by by that. I mean, you can imagine, right? But like, there's millions of people out there, millions of kids who are going through the same thing. And I think it's important that we have to, as a society, because I think society ultimately is responsible for the care of the children, not necessarily the parents. The parents, because the parents can make a child. They'll make one because they had sex, reproduced, or whatever. But that doesn't necessarily qualify them to be a teacher or a mentor or something like that. Some people, parents, are highly unqualified. Not necessarily because they have low IQs either, but because um, maybe like you can use the example of this what example of my own parents. Both their fathers uh, were killed in World War II, serving in the United States Army. One in London bombings, and the other one on the Bataan Death March in the Philippines. And horrific times, horrific deaths that they went through. But I think that my parents, with the removal of their father, basically from the time that they were born, affected their abilities to parent, their parental skills themselves. So certainly for I had to look, outside of my parents, and both of them went to Stanford, by the way, and like graduated mega cum laude. So a lot of, I think if your parent was killed in action back then, you got like a full scholarship to any school you could get into. Anyway, my parents both went to Stanford, and so they probably didn't have low IQs. Who knows? Maybe they did. Maybe the board said, "Well, your parents, both your fathers were killed in action. All right, come on, huh?" Maybe I don't know, but certainly both of them were distinct in their lifetimes. Were distinguished in their fields. So I'm going to make a reasonable assessment and say that they were at least of average intelligence. Anyway, so yeah, back to the thing. Let me see. Was who's responsible for these children, right? For children. And I think that it's society. I've been thinking about this a bit. Really, the teachers and teaching is, in my opinion, the most important job anybody can have, right? I mean, you could be the greatest discoverer. Somebody could discover something, but if you can't pass it on to somebody, it's worth almost nothing, right? Uh, I mean, it might be worth something to that person in their lifetime, right? But if you can't pass on information or don't choose to pass on information, what's it worth? So society as a whole needs to have teachers to survive, right? And prosperous society generally means a spiritually well society when it isn't plagued with um, false ideologies and such. And it's up to every individual. It's not up to the individual though to make the distinction about that. Or it gets Sam Harris. That's the name I was thinking of because it gets back to free will. The three horsemen of the apocalypse, right? That's his name, Sam Harris. Uh, you know, do we have free will? You know. So the thing is, last night I was thinking about this just before I was going to bed. I laid down in bed. Bed's nice, comfortable enough. On this side, the bed's comfortable enough. I felt comfortable in my environment, which is the home with my wife. And I thought to myself at that moment, this is just about as good as it gets. If the forces of nature take me away, I don't think that I could be more happy or content than I am at this moment. I really believed it when I closed my eyes last night, and I went to sleep. And it's just because you can't take money with you. You can't. But at that moment, when I closed my eyes and go to sleep, how could I be any less content than anybody else on the planet? Have a loving wife who loves me. I'm going to sleep in a nice bed. I'm very lucky and fortunate to have these things. So just make a, you know, sort of remind myself that, before I go to sleep, that, I'm not have to worry about things necessarily so much uh, that I can't sleep, or that these, like, whatever worrying I had at that moment last night when I closed my eyes, if I passed away in my sleep, I would have been good with it. And I also told myself, and if there are any problems that I have to work out, well, there's when I wake up, I'll have to figure it out tomorrow and try to go after it. Scott 74 says, money comes and goes. Material items can't buy you love of people. Absolutely, 100%. I agree with that. I think, you know, and another thing I'd add to that list is that, you know, you can't buy love or people, but you also can't, I don't think you can install fear in people, right? And like a lot of societies have tried to do that to control their populations. Like, but ultimately, I don't think that you're going to ever turn people. Ano sa pata sa balo pa? Oh yeah, sa balo pa. Yung kalian? When I like, pero like up. Oh, okay. บีบอกว่าวันนี้เป็นนัดyou know room ตลาดนัดเออเออใช่ถ้าหากว่ายายแล้วก็พ่อตาอยากไปบ้านทำไปก็ได้รับแต่บี้นะบี้ขับรถอ่าครับผมอ่ากินข้าวแล้วครับขอบคุณอะไรผมกวบเสร็จไปอาบน้ำอาบน้ำแล้วก็เรียนนิดหน่อยครับผมอ่าสองที่สองครับยายเต้นขี้หมูครับ6 โมงอ๋อโอเค Okay, so like you could terrorize people like populations and install fear, but you're never going to win people over with that. It's only love, right? Or I don't know if love is by definition the right word. I guess they're like anything, there are variables, right? But certainly the I guess the family name of the definition, at least I'm looking for, is love. You know, anyway, probably going to rain today. We were talking. That was my some friends in the family, and talking about maybe going to one of the um, monasteries on the mountain with a cave system. We've talked about going there for a long time. Haven't been there in a long time. It's really beautiful. It's in the mount on the mountain, and a beautiful view of the valley, along with um, the fact that it's what what's called a wat, or a temple Buddhist temple there for many hundreds of years. So we're thinking about going there. I don't know if we're going to make it today. I don't know. We'll have to see. Just see if we get everybody, because it's a kind of a little bit of a trip, and I think the whole family, you know, multiple members, friends and family want to go. So if we're going to take a long trip to such a place, we want to organize it in a way that is good for everybody. Well, we'll get to the end of the walk here, guys. Thank you so much for joining on this walk, and I really appreciate it. It means the world to me. I mean, you certainly make my day better knowing that there are people out there, good people like you, and I hope that I want to give back to society if I can somehow, some way, and if that's by posting something with a positive message onto the internet, so be it. There's a lot of negative things on the internet, and so I just try to put one of those love qualities out there with the appreciation of our environment and where we are, be able to share something with people that may not have been to this area ever before, or thinking about this area or something like that. Maybe they miss it and can get a view. Anyway, I want to thank everybody, and I hope you all have a wonderful morning, noon, or night, wherever you are on this planet we call Earth. And we'll all love one another and try to be a good human being. And I take that statement from a channel that I watch. It's called Jamal, aka Jamal, and he's always has that shirt on. So just try to be a good human being. And I just think that's. Oh, that's a bad deal, pal. I think that's it's a good message. And yeah, so just good night, everybody. Please have a wonderful and safe and happy and as best you can. And you all have blessings, good health, and everything like that. But this is our time to say goodbye for now.